The Galactic Confederation flagship terminus moved through space like a floating city. Its metal walls stretched for miles in every direction. Inside the ship, hundreds of different alien species worked together. Today was special. Today they would test the humans. Commander Zekthara stood in the observation deck. He was tall and covered in green scales. His yellow eyes watched the white chamber below. The Fourth Empire had sent him to judge if humans were ready to join the galaxy. He was not impressed with what he had seen so far. "These humans are weak," he said to his assistant. "They have no natural armor, no claws, no energy weapons built into their bodies. How did they even reach space?" The assistant, a small blue creature with 4 arms, checked his datapad. "They built machines, Commander. Ships and weapons and computers. They seem to rely on tools instead of natural abilities." Zekthara made a sound like a snake laughing. "Tools can break. Bodies cannot be improved. They will fail this test like all the others." In the white chamber below, laser systems waited in the walls. They were designed to kill. The test was simple but deadly. Walk from one end of the room to the other. Avoid the red beams that would slice through any living thing. Most alien species needed hours to cross the room. Many never made it at all. The viewing area around the chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The Klaxons clicked their mandibles nervously. These insect-like beings had taken 4 hours to complete the test. Their best warrior had barely survived. The Geodites stood silent in the corner. Their crystal bodies reflected the lights in rainbow patterns. They communicated through vibrations that made the floor hum. Even they had lost soldiers to this test. The ethereals floated near the ceiling. They looked like glowing clouds of gas with eyes. They had given up physical bodies long ago. Only their energy forms remained. They watched everything but said nothing. A door opened at the far end of the observation deck. The human delegation walked in. Zekthara expected to see soldiers in armor. Instead, he saw 3 humans in simple blue uniforms. They looked soft and weak. The leader was a woman with dark hair tied back. She carried a small bag and wore glasses. Her name tag read Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth Xenobiology Team. She looked around the room with curious eyes. "Welcome, humans," Zekthara said. His voice boomed through speakers. "I am Commander Zekthara. I will conduct your evaluation today." Sarah looked up at him and smiled. "Nice to meet you, Commander. Thank you for this opportunity." Zekthara was surprised. Most species showed fear when they saw the test chamber. This human seemed relaxed. "Almost happy. Do you understand what this test involves?" he asked. "We read the briefing," Sarah said. "Navigate through a laser field without getting hit." "Sounds challenging." "Challenging?" Zekthara's scales darkened with anger. "This test has killed dozens of the galaxy's finest warriors. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced reflexes. How do you expect to survive?" Sarah shrugged. "We'll figure it out as we go." The other aliens in the observation deck began to whisper. The Klaxons clicked faster. The Geodites' humming grew louder. Even the ethereals pulsed with what might have been concern. Zekthara activated the chamber's systems. Red lights began to flash as the laser grid powered up. "The rules are simple," he announced. "Cross from the entrance to the exit. The lasers will activate the moment you step inside. They fire in random patterns. Each beam can cut through battle armor. 1 hit means death." Sarah walked to the chamber's entrance. She peered through the transparent wall at the maze of laser emitters. Hundreds of small devices lined the walls, floor, and ceiling. Each one could fire a deadly beam in any direction. "How long do most species take to complete this?" she asked. "The Klaxons required 4 hours and 12 minutes, Zekthara said with pride. "The Geodites took 6 hours and 37 minutes. Both lost soldiers in the attempt. And what's the record?" Zekthara's chest swelled. 2 hours and 18 minutes. Set by our greatest 4th warrior." Sarah nodded and began stretching her arms and legs. She bent down to touch her toes. She rolled her shoulders and neck. The aliens watched in confusion. "Are you performing some kind of ritual?" asked the Klaxon representative. "Just warming up," Sarah said. She finished stretching and walked to the chamber door. "I'm ready when you are." Zekthara could not believe what he was seeing. This human showed no fear, no proper respect for the danger ahead. She acted like she was about to take a walk in a park. "Once the test begins, you cannot stop," he warned. "The chamber will not open until you reach the exit or until—" He did not finish the sentence. "Until I die," Sarah said cheerfully. "Got it, no pressure at all." She placed her hand on the door control. The chamber entrance slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the white walls gleamed under bright lights. The laser emitters were small and black, almost invisible against the white surfaces. Sarah stepped to the threshold and looked back at the observation deck. Dozens of alien eyes watched her. Some showed curiosity. Others showed pity. A few showed what might have been hope. "Any advice before I start?" She called up to them. "Move slowly," said a geodite, its voice like crystal bells. "Think before each step. Plan your path carefully. Study the patterns," clicked a klaxon. "Memorize the timing. Patience saves lives. Embrace the energy flow," whispered an ethereal. "Become one with the harmonics." Sarah listened politely to each suggestion. Then she smiled that same relaxed smile. "Thanks, everyone. See you on the other side." She took one step into the chamber. Immediately, alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed along every wall. The laser system came alive with electronic sounds. The first beam fired from the left wall. It was thin as a pencil, but bright as the sun. Sarah tilted her head slightly. The beam passed an inch from her ear. Another beam shot from the floor. Sarah lifted her foot and let it pass underneath. A third beam came from above. She ducked just enough to avoid it. In the observation deck, complete silence fell. The aliens stared in shock. Sarah was not moving slowly and carefully like their warriors had. She was not studying patterns or memorizing timing. She was walking at a normal pace, dodging laser beams like they were raindrops. "Impossible," whispered Zekthara. "The reaction time required. No biological being should be able to move that fast." Sarah was now 10 steps into the chamber. Beams fired from every direction. She twisted her body to let one pass. She bent backward as another went over her chest. She stepped sideways to avoid a third. Her movements looked almost like dancing, graceful and smooth. She never rushed. She never paused. She just kept walking forward while death tried to find her. The klaxons were clicking so fast they sounded like rainfall. The geodite's humming had become a low roar. The ethereals pulsed rapidly with excitement. "How is she doing this?" demanded a klaxon elder. "Our sensors show the beams are firing randomly. There is no pattern to memorize." Zekthara checked his instruments. The readings were correct. The laser system was functioning normally. The beams were indeed firing without any predictable pattern. Yet somehow this human was avoiding every single one. Sarah had now crossed a quarter of the chamber. She paused to retie her shoelace while a beam passed over her head. Then she stood up and continued walking. She was humming a tune. "Is she enjoying this?" asked an ethereal in disbelief. That was exactly what it looked like. Sarah Chen was having fun. She moved through the deadly laser field like she was strolling through a garden. When beams came close, she avoided them with minimal effort. She never looked stressed or worried. In fact, she was smiling the entire time. Halfway across the chamber, Sarah stopped and waved at the observation deck. Several aliens jumped back in alarm, thinking she had been hit. But no laser had touched her. She was just being friendly. "How's everyone doing up there?" she called out. "This is quite a workout." Zekthara felt his scales turning pale. In all his years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. The most elite warriors in the galaxy struggled with this test. Many died attempting it. Yet this human made it look easy. Sarah resumed walking. Her pace never changed. Her expression never shifted from that calm, friendly smile. She dodged beam after beam without seeming to pay attention to them. The aliens in the observation deck began to realize they might have made a serious mistake about humanity. Commander Zekthara's hand shook as he gripped the observation rail. Below in the white chamber, the human continued her impossible dance through the laser field. Each beam should have killed her. Each step should have been her last. Yet she moved like the deadly lights were nothing more than gentle rain. "Increase the difficulty level," Zekthara ordered his technician. The small blue alien looked up from his control panel. "Commander, we are already at maximum setting. Any higher and the system might overload. Then find a way to make it harder." More laser emitters activated. The chamber filled with crisscrossing beams of red death. The pattern became so complex that it looked like a solid wall of light. No living creature should be able to navigate through such a maze. Sarah paused and looked around at the new configuration. She nodded appreciatively like someone admiring artwork in a museum. "Much better," she called up to the observation deck. I was starting to get bored. The klaxon elder made a sound like breaking glass. "Bored? She was bored?" Sarah resumed walking. If anything, the increased difficulty seemed to energize her. Her movements became more fluid, more graceful. She flowed between the laser beams like water, finding its way through cracks in stone. At one point, 3 beams converged on the exact spot where she was standing. The aliens gasped, certain they were about to witness the human's death. Sarah simply dropped to one knee, letting all 3 beams pass overhead, then stood and continued forward. "Magnificent," whispered an ethereal. "She moves as if she can see the future." "Impossible," growled Zekthara. "No species has that ability. We tested the humans extensively. They have no psychic powers, no enhanced nervous systems. They are completely ordinary." But what was happening below was anything except ordinary. Sarah had now crossed 3/4 of the chamber. She had not been touched by a single beam. More incredibly, she appeared to be having a conversation with herself as she walked. "Left foot here, right foot there," she murmured, loud enough for the sensitive alien microphones to pick up. "Duck under this one, lean away from that one. It's all about finding the rhythm." "Rhythm?" The geodite representative's crystal body chimed with confusion. "The beams fire randomly. There is no rhythm." Sarah heard this comment through the chamber's speakers. She laughed while bending backward to avoid a beam that passed inches from her nose. "Everything has a rhythm," she said, straightening up and continuing forward. "You just have to know how to listen for it." In the observation deck, heated arguments broke out between the different species. The Klaxons insisted there had to be some kind of trick. The geodites wanted to scan the human for hidden technology. The ethereals spoke of impossible cosmic harmonies. Zekthara activated a private communication channel to his ship's science officer. "Run every scan we have on that human. I want to know how she is doing this." "Scans are already running, Commander," came the reply. "Results are unusual." "Explain." "Her brain activity is elevated but not stressed. Her heart rate is actually slower than when she entered the chamber. Her muscle tension is at normal resting levels. By every measurement we have, she should be terrified and fighting for her life. Instead, she appears to be relaxed and enjoying herself." Zekthara felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of species could treat mortal danger as entertainment? Sarah had now reached the final section of the chamber. This was where the real test began. The previous area had been training, designed to weed out those who lacked the basic reflexes needed for the true challenge ahead. A warning klaxon sounded. Red lights flashed more urgently. The chamber's voice system activated with a pre-recorded message in the trade language used by all galactic species. "Warning. Final test section activated. Survival probability less than 0.001%. Retreat is still possible. Do you wish to continue?" Sarah looked up at the observation deck and grinned. "Is that the best you can do?" She stepped into the final section without hesitation. What happened next defied every law of physics the aliens thought they knew. The final section was a spinning cylinder filled with laser beams that fired in completely random patterns. The beams came from every direction at once, creating a 3-dimensional maze of death that shifted every millisecond. No algorithm could predict the pattern, because there was no pattern. It was pure chaos given deadly form. The mathematical probability of survival was so low that most computers could not calculate it. Sarah entered this whirling storm of light and death with the same casual confidence she had shown throughout the test. But now something changed in the way she moved. Her actions became less human and more like something else entirely. She flowed through the chaos with movements that seemed to violate the basic rules of biology. She twisted in ways that should have been impossible. She moved through gaps that appeared too small for any living thing. At one point, she used a laser beam itself as support, somehow leaning against the energy to change direction in mid-air. The aliens watching could not understand how this was possible. Energy beams had no physical substance. Nothing could touch them without being destroyed. Yet the human was using them like stepping stones. "This cannot be real," said the Klaxon elder. "We must be seeing some kind of illusion." "All sensors confirm reality," replied Zekthara's science officer over the communication channel. "What we are seeing is actually happening." Sarah was now deep inside the spinning chaos. Laser beams filled the air around her like a solid wall of light. She moved through them with a grace that belonged more to dreams than reality. Her body bent and twisted and flowed like liquid mercury. The aliens fell silent. Even the ethereals stopped their constant whispering. Everyone watched in stunned amazement as this small human female accomplished the impossible. She was not just surviving the test. She was mastering it. "How long has it been?" asked someone in the observation deck. Zekathera checked his chronometer and felt his blood turn cold. 17 minutes, 17 minutes. The fastest time ever recorded was over 2 hours. This human was moving through the deadliest test in galactic history, like it was a casual morning exercise. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not from the test chamber, but from the ship's external sensors. "Commander." His communications officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "We have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting movement at the edge of the system. Can it wait?" Zekathera snapped. "We are in the middle of evaluating the humans." "Sir, it's the Devourers. 3 scout ships just emerged from dark space. They are heading directly for us." The observation deck erupted in panic. The Devourers were the galaxy's greatest nightmare, ancient beings from another dimension who consumed entire civilizations. They had been dormant for thousands of years. Their sudden appearance could only mean one thing. They were waking up. Zekathera's mind raced. The Confederation had been preparing for this day for centuries. Every military strategist agreed that when the Devourers returned, the galaxy would need warriors unlike any they had ever seen. Soldiers who could think independently, adapt instantly, and face impossible odds without breaking. Every species they had tested had failed. The Klaxons were too methodical. The Geodites too slow. The Ethereals too detached from physical reality. The Vorth too rigid in their thinking. But this human. Sarah Chen emerged from the final section of the test chamber. She was breathing slightly harder than when she started, but otherwise appeared completely unharmed. She walked to the exit door and pressed the control panel. The chamber powered down. The laser systems went silent. The test was over. Sarah had completed the impossible course in 18 minutes and 43 seconds. She had shattered every existing record by more than 6 to 1. More importantly, she had done it while making the whole thing look easy. She looked up at the observation deck and waved. "That was fun. Do you have anything more challenging?" Zekathera stared down at her. The alarms were still sounding. Devourer scouts were approaching. The galaxy was about to face its greatest crisis in millennia, and standing in the chamber below was a human who had just redefined what the word impossible meant. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zekathera began to think they might actually have a chance. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the decontamination chamber, waiting for the systems to clear her for exit. Through the transparent walls, she could see the aliens in the observation deck. They were all talking at once, their different languages creating a symphony of confusion and amazement. She smiled to herself. The test had been exactly what she expected. Challenging but manageable. Like most things humans faced, it just required the right approach. The decontamination cycle finished with a soft chime. The exit door opened, and Sarah stepped into the corridor where Commander Zekathera was waiting for her. His green scales had turned an unusual pale color. "That was impressive, Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Would you mind answering some questions about your performance?" "Of course," Sarah replied, "though I should mention that your alarm systems seem to be having some issues." "Are you under attack?" Zekathera's yellow eyes widened. "How did you know that?" "The pattern of the alert signals. Short bursts followed by long pauses. That's a standard warning for distant threats, not immediate danger. Also, your crew's body language changed about 10 minutes ago. More tense, but not panicked. Something serious, but not urgent." The commander stared at her. In the span of 30 seconds, this human had analyzed their military situation more accurately than most of his senior officers. "You are correct," he admitted. "Devourer scouts have been detected at the edge of our system. We believe they are testing our defenses." Sarah's expression grew serious. "How long since the last Devourer contact?" "Nearly 3,000 years. And now they're back. That's why you're testing species for combat capability, isn't it? You need soldiers for a war." Zekathera was impressed despite himself. "Your species shows remarkable analytical ability, but I still do not understand how you completed our test. Your biology should not allow such performance." Sarah tilted her head thoughtfully. "What do you know about Earth's history? Your planet is relatively young. Your species only achieved spaceflight recently. You have no natural weapons or armor. By galactic standards, you should not have survived long enough to develop civilization. You're missing some important details," Sarah said. "May I show you something?" She pulled a small device from her bag. It projected a holographic image of a blue and green planet. Earth rotated slowly in the air between them. This is our world, Sarah began. It looks peaceful from space, doesn't it? But appearances can be deceiving. The image zoomed in, showing different regions of the planet. In the last million years, Earth has gone through multiple ice ages. Massive volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, magnetic pole reversals, climate changes that wiped out most life forms. Zekthara watched the images of natural disasters play out. How did anything survive such conditions? That's exactly the point, Sarah said. Only the most adaptable species made it through. Everything else went extinct. Humans didn't survive because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we were the most flexible. The hologram shifted to show early human ancestors. Our bodies evolved for endurance, not strength. We could run for hours without stopping. We could track prey across vast distances. We could adapt to any climate, any environment, any challenge. But that still does not explain your performance in the test chamber, Zekthara insisted. Sarah smiled. Let me ask you something, Commander. What was the most dangerous predator on your homeworld? Zekthara thought for a moment. The Krenith, large reptiles with armor plating and toxic bite. They were apex predators until we developed energy weapons. And how did your people deal with them? We avoided their territory, built our cities far from their hunting grounds, created barriers to keep them out. Exactly, Sarah said. You solved the problem by avoiding it. Very logical and effective. But humans couldn't do that. The hologram changed to show various Earth predators: saber-toothed tigers, cave bears, giant wolves, venomous snakes. On Earth, dangerous predators were everywhere, Sarah explained. We couldn't avoid them because there was nowhere to run, so we learned to face them directly. We learned to turn danger into opportunity. I do not understand. We became persistence hunters, Sarah said. The hologram showed a group of early humans tracking a large animal across open plains. We would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until it collapsed from exhaustion. No other predator could match our endurance. Zekthara watched the ancient hunt play out. This required incredible mental discipline. More than that, it required us to think differently about danger. While the animal was trying to escape, we were calculating, planning, predicting its movements. We turned hunting into a mental game. The images shifted to show humans dealing with various natural disasters: floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, blizzards. Every generation faced new challenges, Sarah continued. We learned to read the environment like a language, to see patterns in chaos, to find opportunity in crisis. Your laser test was pattern recognition? Partly. But more than that, it was about changing my perspective. Most species see those lasers as obstacles to avoid. I saw them as dance partners to work with. Zekthara's scales rippled with confusion. Dance partners? Sarah laughed. Think about it. The lasers aren't trying to kill me personally. They're just following their programming. If I can understand their rhythm, I can move with them instead of against them. But the patterns were random. Random to a computer, maybe. But humans evolved to find patterns in randomness. We had to, or we would have died out millions of years ago. The hologram changed to show human brain scans during various activities. Our brains are wired differently than most species. We process multiple streams of information simultaneously. We make split-second decisions based on incomplete data. We adapt our behavior in real time. Zekthara studied the brain scans. These neural pathways, they seem chaotic. That's our strength, Sarah said. Where other species see chaos, we see possibility. Where others see problems, we see puzzles to solve. But your species has no natural weapons, Zekthara protested. No armor. No enhanced physical abilities. We have something better, Sarah replied. We have imagination. The hologram showed human technological development through the ages. Stone tools, agriculture, metallurgy, machinery, computers, spaceships. Every tool we created started as an idea, Sarah explained. We imagined solutions that didn't exist yet, then made them real. Other species adapt to their environment. We adapt our environment to us. This is why your species advanced so quickly. It's also why your test didn't scare me, Sarah said. To a human, that laser chamber looked like a puzzle. My brain immediately started analyzing patterns, calculating probabilities, planning routes. I wasn't fighting for survival. I was playing a game. Zekthara was quiet for a long moment. Everything he thought he knew about human limitations was wrong. They weren't weak because they lacked natural weapons. They were strong because they didn't need them. There's something else you should know, Sarah added. I'm not special among humans. What I did in there? Most humans could do the same with a little practice. Most humans. We all have the same basic programming: adaptability, pattern recognition, problem solving under pressure. Some humans are better at specific skills, but we all share the core abilities. The commander felt a chill run through his body. How many humans are there? About 7 billion on Earth, a few thousand more in our space colonies. 7 billion. 7 billion beings who could potentially perform like Sarah had in the test chamber. Zekthara's military mind began to grasp the implications. "Commander," Sarah said gently, "about those Devourer scouts, you might want to consider that humans have been dealing with impossible situations for our entire evolutionary history. We're very good at turning impossible into inevitable." Alarms continued to sound throughout the ship, but for the first time since the crisis began, Commander Zekthara felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. "Dr. Chen," he said formally, "I believe we need to discuss humanity's role in galactic defense." Sarah grinned. "I thought you'd never ask." The emergency council chamber aboard the Terminus filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Sarah Chen found herself seated at a round table surrounded by beings she had only read about in xenobiology textbooks. The urgency in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Commander Zekthara stood at the center of the room, his scales now completely pale with stress. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the outer edge of their solar system. 3 dark shapes moved against the starfield like sharks in black water. "The situation has escalated," Zekthara announced. "What began as 3 scout ships has become a full reconnaissance fleet. 12 Devourer vessels are now probing our defenses." A Klaxon elder clicked his mandibles nervously. "Have they detected our presence?" "Unknown. The Devourers do not communicate with us. They never have. They simply arrive, consume everything in their path, and move on." Sarah raised her hand. "Commander, forgive my ignorance, but I need more information about these Devourers. What exactly are we facing?" The room fell silent. Several aliens looked uncomfortable, as if she had asked about a nightmare they preferred not to discuss. An ethereal's voice whispered through the chamber like wind through crystal chimes. "The Devourers are not from our dimension, human. They exist in the spaces between spaces, feeding on the life force of entire worlds. 3,000 years ago," added a geodite, its crystal body chiming softly, "they swept through this sector of the galaxy. 17 civilizations were completely consumed, billions of lives lost. Entire species erased from existence." Sarah felt a chill. "How did they stop?" "They didn't stop," Zekthara said grimly. "They simply left. We believe they exhausted the available resources in this region and moved on to find fresh feeding grounds. And now they're back. The question," said the Klaxon elder, "is whether we are ready for them this time." Zekthara activated the holographic display. Images of past Devourer attacks filled the air. Sarah watched in horror as entire planets were stripped of life, their surfaces left barren and dead. "The Galactic Confederation has spent the last 3 millennia preparing for their return," Zekthara explained. "We have built the largest fleet in galactic history. We have developed new weapons, new defensive technologies, new strategies. But there is one thing we have never been able to solve," added an ethereal. "The Devourers do not fight like any enemy we understand. They are chaos given form. They adapt to our tactics faster than we can deploy them." Sarah studied the battle recordings. She watched as perfectly organized galactic fleets were torn apart by Devourer swarms that seemed to move without any coherent strategy. "You need troops who can think independently," she said, understanding dawning in her voice. "Exactly," Zekthara confirmed. "Every species in the Confederation follows strict military doctrine. Chain of command, standardized tactics, predictable responses. Against normal enemies, this is a strength. Against the Devourers, it is a fatal weakness. They learn our patterns and turn them against us," said a geodite. "Our greatest strength becomes our greatest vulnerability." Sarah leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. "So you've been testing species to find natural chaos fighters, beings who can adapt in real time without following predetermined patterns." "For 50 years we have tested every species we could find," Zekthara said. "The results have been disappointing." The holographic display changed to show test results from various species. The Klaxons were too methodical, requiring hours to adapt to new situations. The geodites were powerful but slow, unable to change tactics quickly enough. The ethereals were too detached from physical reality to be effective in combat. Even the Vorth Empire's finest warriors, despite their natural aggression, were too rigid in their thinking. They followed battle doctrines that had been refined over thousands of years. When those doctrines failed, they had no backup plan. Every species we tested approached the laser chamber as a problem to be solved through careful analysis. Sekthara continued. They studied patterns, memorized timing, planned routes in advance. This methodology would be useless against devourer swarms. But humans are different, Sarah said. You didn't analyze the laser patterns, confirmed a klaxon. You simply entered the chamber and improvised. You treated deadly danger as if it were entertainment, added an ethereal, its voice filled with wonder. That's because humans don't see danger the same way you do, Sarah explained. We see it as information to be processed and used. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn something new. Sekthara activated a new display showing Earth's position relative to the Devourer approach route. There is something else you must understand, Dr. Chen. The Devourers are not heading for our core worlds. Their trajectory will take them directly past your solar system. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. They're going to Earth? Earth sits at a critical junction of hyperspace routes, Sekthara explained. If the Devourers establish a base there, they can control access to this entire sector of the galaxy. How long do we have? Based on their current speed, approximately 6 months. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. 6 months to prepare her entire species for a war they knew nothing about. 6 months to train humans to fight enemies that existed beyond their understanding. Commander, she said carefully, what exactly are you asking of humanity? Sekthara's expression grew grave. The Confederation has a proposal. We want to establish Earth as the training center for a new type of military unit. Rapid response teams made up of humans who can think and adapt like you demonstrated today. You want to turn my people into soldiers. We want to give them the chance to save the galaxy, corrected an ethereal, and themselves. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a physical force. Humanity had just reached the stars. They were barely beginning to understand their place in the galaxy. Now they were being asked to become the galaxy's defenders. What kind of support would you provide? She asked. Full technological integration, Sekthara replied immediately. Access to all Confederation databases. Advanced weapons training. Starship technology. Medical support. Whatever humanity needs to prepare for this conflict. And if we refuse? The room fell silent. Finally, a geodite spoke, its voice like distant thunder. Then the galaxy will face the Devourers with conventional forces. We will likely lose. Your species will be consumed along with the rest of us. Sarah looked around the table at the assembled representatives. These were beings from civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. They had technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes, yet they were turning to humanity for salvation. I need to contact Earth, she said. This decision cannot be made by one person. Of course, Sekthara agreed. But time is not our ally. The Devourers grow stronger with each passing day. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The holographic display updated with new information. The 12 Devourer scout ships had been joined by others. Dozens of dark shapes now moved through space toward the inner system. They're accelerating their timeline, Sekthara said grimly. Dr. Chen, I fear we may not have 6 months after all. Sarah stood up from the table. Then we better get started. Commander, I'll need access to your fastest communication array, and I'll need detailed information about Devourer capabilities to share with Earth's military leaders. You have everything you need, Sekthara assured her. As Sarah headed for the door, the ethereal's voice followed her like a whisper of wind. Human, are you certain your species will agree to this? Sarah paused at the threshold and looked back at the assembled aliens. Commander Sekthara told me that one wrong move in your test would mean death. I told him not to blink. She smiled that same confident smile she had worn in the laser chamber. My species has been playing games with death for millions of years. We're very good at not blinking. The door closed behind her, leaving the alien representatives to contemplate the strange twist of fate that had made humanity their last hope for survival. The communication array aboard the terminus hummed with activity as Sarah Chen established contact with Earth. The holographic display showed the familiar blue marble of her homeworld, now seeming impossibly small and fragile against the vast darkness of space. General Martinez appeared on the screen, his weathered face showing concern. Behind him, Sarah could see the Emergency Command Center at Earth Defense Headquarters. Other figures moved in the background, military leaders and scientists working frantically at their stations. Dr. Chen, the general said without preamble, "We've been monitoring the situation through your reports. The President and the Joint Chiefs are standing by. Give us your assessment." Sarah took a deep breath. In the past hour, she had reviewed everything the Confederation knew about the Devourers. The information was both fascinating and terrifying. "General, we're facing an enemy unlike anything in human history," she began. "The Devourers exist partially outside normal spacetime. They don't follow conventional physics. Their ships can phase in and out of reality, making them nearly impossible to target with standard weapons. What about their numbers? Potentially unlimited. They reproduce by consuming life force from entire planets. Each world they destroy makes them stronger." General Martinez's expression grew grimmer. "Conventional military response would be suicide," Sarah said bluntly. "Every major galactic civilization has tried to fight them using standard tactics. They all failed. The Devourers adapt too quickly to organized strategies. Then what do you recommend?" Sarah looked around the communication chamber where Commander Zekthara and several other alien representatives waited anxiously for her response. "I recommend we do what humans do best," she said. "We improvise." "Explain." "The reason I passed their test wasn't because I'm superhuman, General. It's because I approached the problem like a human. I didn't try to memorize patterns or follow predetermined strategies. I treated it like a game and made up the rules as I went along. And you think this approach will work against the Devourers?" "It's the only approach that has a chance of working," Sarah replied. "The Devourers expect organized resistance. They're prepared for conventional warfare. What they're not prepared for is chaos." General Martinez was quiet for a moment. "What kind of support are the aliens offering?" "Everything," Sarah said. "Technology transfers, advanced weapons, starship designs, training facilities. They want to turn Earth into a military academy for unconventional warfare." "What's the catch?" Sarah glanced at Commander Zekthara. "There is no catch, General. They're desperate. We're their last hope. How many humans would be involved? As many as volunteer. They need rapid response teams, but the larger the force, the better our chances." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. The holographic display updated with urgent new information. The Devourer fleet had grown to over 100 ships and was accelerating toward the inner system. "General," Sarah said urgently, "I need an answer now. The Devourers are moving faster than expected." General Martinez looked off screen, apparently consulting with others. When he turned back, his expression was resolute. "Dr. Chen, I've just been authorized by the President to accept the Confederation's proposal. We're mobilizing every available resource. How quickly can we begin training?" "Immediately," Commander Zekthara interjected, stepping into view of the communication array. "We have training facilities that can accommodate millions of humans simultaneously." "Millions?" General Martinez looked skeptical. "General," Sarah said, "you need to understand something. The aliens have been testing species for 50 years looking for natural chaos fighters. They found exactly one species that fits their requirements. Us. What makes us so special?" Sarah smiled. "We're the species that turned persistence hunting into an art form. We're the species that survived ice ages by refusing to give up. We're the species that looked at the impossible challenge of flight and invented airplanes. We don't just adapt to problems, General. We turn problems into advantages." The communication link crackled with interference as more ships began arriving in the system. But these weren't Devourer vessels. Sarah watched in amazement as sleek Confederation warships dropped out of hyperspace, forming a defensive perimeter around the terminus. "The entire Confederation fleet is converging on this position," Zekthara announced. "Every species is sending their finest warriors to learn from humans." "Learn what exactly?" General Martinez asked. "How to think like humans," Sarah replied. "How to see order in chaos. How to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. How to laugh in the face of impossible odds." As if summoned by her words, the Devourer fleet suddenly changed course. Instead of continuing toward the inner system, they turned directly toward the gathering Confederation forces. "They're coming here," Zekthara said, his scales darkening with alarm. "They must have detected our gathering." "How long until they arrive?" Sarah asked. "At their current speed, approximately 6 hours." Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but not with fear, with anticipation. This was it. the moment her species had been unconsciously preparing for throughout their entire evolutionary history. "General," she said, turning back to the communication array, "I need you to contact every military base, every training facility, every academy on Earth. We need volunteers. As many as you can get. For what? For the first field test of human unconventional warfare doctrine." General Martinez stared at her. "You want to take untrained civilians into combat against an enemy that destroyed galactic civilizations?" "I want to take humans into combat," Sarah corrected. "Training is just teaching people to follow predetermined patterns. Humans are born knowing how to improvise." "This is insane." "This is human," Sarah replied. "General, in 6 hours, a force of chaos-based entities is going to attack this position. They're expecting to face the same organized resistance they've always encountered. Instead, they're going to face something that has never existed before, which is organized chaos. Human chaos, the kind of chaos that built civilization out of nothing and reached for the stars. Because we were told it was impossible, the communication link fluctuated as massive energy fields began building around the arriving Confederation ships. On the display, Sarah could see hundreds of vessels from dozens of species, all waiting for the approaching storm. "General Martinez," Commander Zekthara said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I officially request that humanity assume command of all defensive operations." General Martinez looked stunned. "You want us to command alien fleets? We want you to teach us how to think like humans," an ethereal's voice whispered through the communication array. "Show us how to turn impossibility into inevitability." Sarah looked at the gathering fleet, then at the approaching devourer swarm, then back at General Martinez on Earth. "General," she said quietly, "this is what our species was made for. This is why we survived when everything else on Earth went extinct. This is why we reached space against all odds. This moment right here." General Martinez was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Dr. Chen, you have Earth's full support. We'll have the first wave of volunteers in space within 4 hours. How many? As many as you need. Sarah, the President wants me to ask you something. Are you sure about this?" Sarah looked around at the alien representatives watching her with hope in their eyes. She thought about her species' long journey from the African savanna to the stars. She thought about every impossible challenge humans had ever faced and overcome. "General," she said with that same confident smile, "Commander Zekthara warned me that one wrong move in their test would mean death. I told him not to blink." She gestured toward the approaching devourer fleet. "They've made the mistake of threatening humanity's home. Now it's their turn not to blink." The communication ended, leaving the command chamber in silence. Outside, the galaxy's greatest military forces prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of all life in their sector of space. Commander Zekthara looked at Sarah with something approaching awe. "Dr. Chen, I have one final question." "Yes?" "Your general asked how many volunteers you needed. You said as many as necessary. How many humans are willing to volunteer for a mission like this?" Sarah's smile widened. "Commander, you're about to discover something very important about humanity. When we're told that something is impossible, that just makes us want to try it more." She gestured toward the viewport where Earth hung in the distance, already beginning to glow with the launch trails of countless ships rising from its surface. "The answer to your question is simple. All of us." As the first wave of human volunteers arrived to join the greatest military alliance in galactic history, the Devourers encountered something they had never faced before in all their eons of existence. An enemy that treated their impossible power as just another interesting puzzle to solve.